Anything else to say? We can start with the pledge. Pledge allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our chaplain, Tim, is held up, so he can't be here. I'm gonna ask, past President Ed, if you could just, sure, lead us in the opening.
Please bow your head. Father, we just thank you for this day. Thank you for the safety of us getting here today. Thank you for winter finally showing up. And just bless our time together, bless this food to our use, and bless us to thy service. In your name we pray. Amen.
Thank you. Let's see. Favorite. Serving cookies.
I took them around already.
Yeah. So announcements upcoming, Lions dinner date. Anybody have some info? Can have the wine dinner date? It is the 30th of January. Minor Gardens, and it is, when is that? 2 weeks? 2 weeks from tonight.
6 o'clock.
6
Tickets are
o'clock.
still available.
And you can get that on Eventbrite,
Yes.
right? And the link, which has been sent out several times, you've got a link. If you need it, we can send out a link again, right, Cheryl?
Yeah, me too.
It's really easy to buy the tickets right on there, so, you can print them off, about put them in digitally. So let's have a good showing and a good event. There's been a lot of planning going into that. Mission trip coming up, in 2.5 weeks. So we've got, Cheryl and I and Brent. Who else in the room? There's 14 of us that will have a trip. So a little smaller team, but we're gonna work hard. And in Suriname, South America. We're leaving on Monday afternoon to fly to Miami. And then Tuesday out of Miami to Suriname, because they only have a flight in every other day. A flight out every other day. So we don't want to miss the flight in or the flight out. Any other announcements coming up? Okay, tail twister. I'm gonna turn it over to Rob. Jamie was caught in Oregon. He's not on the plane yet back, so
When is Jamie coming back?
he's supposed to be flying back right now.
All right, I'm going easy on it with this, and I'm gonna look. And I'm studying college for the Lions, okay?
Lions clubs or the Lions team?
The Lions team. Cards over here. Have we got any, special bucks other than mine for the Lions?
We didn't meet last week. We had to say go blue.
All right, okay, all right, very good.
Nope.
See if the speaker works. Speaker works.
Do we have any guests other than our distinguished speaker?
I'll be in Scottsdale, Arizona for the next 2 months. Anybody that gets close, I'll pay buy a drink.
I guess $5 is covered for 2 months.
He didn't catch me. Don't get caught.
Anything else? No.
Raffle. Raffle.
Oh, raffle. Yeah, okay.
Happy bucks.
Carolyn had one.
You weren't shamed into that, will you?
No, Lions to the
Okay, there
Lions.
you
Why
go,
would I
there you
not
go.
do
All right.
that?
Okay, raffle. That's gonna help.
All right.
$5 for the first ticket that comes out.
Got 12 tickets all at once.
You got them all in now? All right, I'm pulling out. That all sound right?
All perfect.
Sticky you are. All right, last four numbers are 4217. 4217. Must be Jamie. Raise your hand, Brett, for mine. Oh, sure.
Gotta be somebody here.
All right, this is the big one. I don't know if it's a big one. Jeff isn't here. 4287 or half the pot. Okay, Bob. Did you get in there? Can you put this in? Here's the chip. Yeah. You can shake it around a little bit.
Take it around.
Pick a round one.
Pick a round one?
Yeah.
Round red. That's a good poem. Oh, you got, oh, yeah. Jeez. $5.
This microphone, see how that works? Does that sound any better? Except it's me. Rob, thank you for taking over for Jamie. He'll pay you when he gets back. Any other announcements? Thank you all for being here today, though, getting through the driving and all that. Usman, be careful driving back, okay? Great to have you here. And we talked last meeting when he was here about his 100-mile bike challenge. And Usman is already working out on a bike in his basement. He's on got his wife's bike and they put it on a roller trainer. So he's getting ready and he's working right now on getting ready for that 100-miler. So that'll be a great event. So I'd like to go into our program and ask Rick Stevens to come up and introduce our special guest who traveled all the way across the state today. Good.
Power off.
Power off.
Founded in 1913 as the Anti-Defamation League, the ADL's mission is to stop the defamation of the Jewish people and to secure justice and fair treatment for all. The ADL works against all forms of anti-Semitism and bias, a global leader in combating anti-Semitism, countering extremism, and battling bigotry everywhere. The ADL works to protect democracy and ensure a just and inclusive society for all, and sadly, business is booming. Our guest today, Carolyn Normandin, is the director of the Michigan office of the ADL. Carolyn has been the regional director for nearly 6 years. She assumed this role after a 30-plus year career with General Motors and time with the Charles H. Wright Museum of African American History in Troy. Carolyn's responsibilities include overseeing ADL's efforts in Michigan to protect and advocate for civil rights and religious freedom, the education and promotion of diversity. Carolyn?
Thank you. I think I'm gonna try and move this so that I'm not standing in the way. And might need some help, tech help.
He's right there.
Okay. All right, so I am gonna, sorry to turn my back on y'all, but I'll stand up here so that I don't have to keep turning my back. Is that okay? All right. So, thank you very much, Rick, for the introduction, and I won't go over everything. It's gonna be hard for me to get through, what I've got to get through today. This is more than a 30-minute discussion. Every one of the topics I'm going to talk about right now probably could have an hour or two discussion. Rick was very, very correct in saying, business is booming in the hate and bigotry arena. We could go through a lot of discussion about why that is, but, you all have been founded 95 years ago here in Grand Rapids, and ADL was founded 113 years ago. At a very similar time in the country, populist president, cutting immigration, people trying to get into the country, lots of people concerned about immigration. And one of the things that Rick talked about was our mission. I'm gonna repeat it because you're gonna hear me talk about it the rest of the day. And that is, our mission has always, we are an unapologetically Jewish organization. We are unapologetically supportive of Israel, and I'll talk a little bit about what's going on overseas in a minute. But the most important thing you have to understand is, when our founders founded ADL, it was very crucial for them to say, we are going to fight anti-Semitism, but we are also going to secure equal justice and fair treatment to all. And it was simple and clear, because the founders of ADL knew that until Jews were safe, no one would be safe, and no one would be safe until all the Jews were safe. It's just simple as that. I'm going to talk a little bit about the history and where anti-Semitism comes from. Oops, wrong way. There we go. But I want you to think of ADL's work in three basic lenses. We advocate, we educate, and we investigate. Advocacy is exactly what I talked about, exactly the way it sounds. We advocate for good hate crimes laws. We stand up for one another. We, from the very smallest community city council to all the way up to federal hate crimes laws. Last year, I testified 3 or 4 times in the Michigan House and Senate on hate crimes that would make our hate crimes law be more robust. One of them passed both houses, all 3 of them passed the House. A couple of them are still waiting in the Senate. One of the things that we, that was passed, that was signed into law, was the idea that if you vandalize a house of worship, a mosque, a church, a synagogue, a communal center for LGBTQ, if you desecrate a place where a specific characteristic of person finds solace there, the penalty will be greater. The Attorney General said famously, I think you should get a bigger penalty if you vandalize a church than if you vandalize a barn. So that's one of the laws we've advocated for. Our education and training is also simple. We are in more than 35 schools with our No Place for Hate program. It is a climate program. Students and teachers and staff members work on the climate of the school. And it's a designation, just like if you do what you need to do to win the state championship, you get the big banner, here. Big banner. This is a No Place for Hate school. And it's just students declaring, we are going to be a place where hate doesn't exist. So our education programs, we do workplace education, anti-bias training, things like that. The the investigation. Now, I use that word loosely because we are not police. I do work with police all day, every day. We work, again, from the most local, small town sheriff or small police chief, all the way up to Homeland Security and the FBI, because these kinds of incidents of hatred and bigotry find their ways into every community. I was talking earlier that I use my hand all the time with my ADL colleagues, and I kind of do the upper and lower peninsula. Hate is happening, incidents are happening all over Michigan, all over the United States, all over the world. And we can talk about why that happens, but I was specifically asked to talk about anti-Semitism today. So I think the biggest thing that you have to understand is anti-Semitism is really poorly misunderstood. Really poorly understood, it's misunderstood. So we've been studying the reasons for anti-Semitism since ADL has been in existence, and that's more than a century. But in 2022, we worked with our Center on Anti-Semitism Research and a couple of other research centers to kind of look at different things, and I'm going to share that with you in a minute. We were guided by 3 questions. Number 1, what causes anti-Semitism? Number 2, how does anti-Semitism spread? And number 3, what reduces and prevents anti-Semitism? And we're going to get into that in a minute. The number 1 thing I think is really important is understanding anti-Semitic tropes. There are several of them. there's not hundreds, but the ones that I'm gonna, and I'm not, and I could spend an hour just talking about the tropes. We don't have an hour today, but I'm gonna just touch on a couple of them, particularly Jewish power, denial, and, I'll talk about the blood libel, Jewish power, and then I'll talk about anti-Zionism. The reason I picked those is because anti-Zionism is rampant right now because of the war between Hamas and Israel, and I'll talk about that in a second. The blood libel is a pernicious idea that has been promulgated throughout centuries. Most of these tropes, the youngest two are denial and anti-Zionism. Those are only 75 years old. The rest of them are thousands of years old. But I'll pick denial, I'll pick blood libel because there's this idea that Jews somehow use blood, particularly the blood of Christian children, in their rituals. And this has been propagated for centuries, and it's been traced back to a monk named Thomas Monmouth in the Middle Ages. A young boy had died. No one knew why. Could have fallen out of a tree, could have had an aneurysm, could have blacked out, could have whatever. They found this boy, and the townspeople were very, very frightening. And for one of the things I'm going to talk about is sort of the conspiracy about Jewish people and where anti-Semitism really comes from. And so this monk, trying to assuage everyone, said Jews use the blood of Christian children for their rituals, particularly to make matzah at Passover and all these crazy things. Completely ridiculous, except that it's been promulgated for the last hundreds and hundreds of years. Now to a point where you can look at any QAnon conspiracy theory in the world and you see Jews using blood, or the Mossad opening up their coats and, harvesting organs. That's one that is so crazy and so ridiculous. I often point it out. The other one I point out, and again, I'm going to give you a resource at the end of this so that you can learn. We have a book. We actually produced a little book. It's a link online. I'm going to give it to you, and you can read for 15 minutes about the origins of all these weird myths or conspiracy theories. The other one I'm going to talk about, it because it's so pervasive, is the idea of Jewish power. This comes from a book called The Protocols of the Elders of Zion. This is a fictitious book about a fictitious meeting. Unsure if it was Czechoslovakian oligarchs or Russian oligarchs, but in the mid 1800s, around 1860, 1870, this myth started being promulgated about this secret meeting where the Jews were gonna take over the world. And you see often a globe with a hand and a Jewish star on it. That is the idea of Jewish power. And that comes directly from the Protocols of the Learned Elders of Zion, which is the playbook for white supremacists in this country right now, right here. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about the connections between some of these myths, but I urge you to take a look at the resource I'm going to give you, because I could spend all my time talking about the myths. But let's unpack anti-Semitism a bit. First of all, anti-Semitism can be conscious or unconscious. It can be implicit or explicit. It is usually racialized bigotry. And what I mean by that is people don't really have to know Jewish people to dislike them. Jewish people often say that they've had an encounter like this with somebody who said, "Oh, you're the first Jew I ever met. Can I see your horns?" It's like this idea, or do you have a tail? Mine was much smaller. Somebody said, when I first met my college roommate, who became my maid of honor, she said, "I heard from Stephanie, you're a Jew. I've never met a Jew. What's a Jew?" And she was very inquisitive. But Stephanie, the person who told her, "You're gonna love Carolyn, but she's a Jew." That kind of thing happened even when I was in college. So it's this weird sort of pernicious thing. Almost all the time, anti-Semitism is not about religion. Almost all the time. It's almost all the time an indicator of societal ills. And I'll give you just one quick explanation of that. We just got through 4 years of the the craziest thing that we've ever lived through, the pandemic. Very quickly, in January of 2020, people really didn't even know what coronavirus was, but they quickly, it was isolated around February, people started talking about it. By March, everything was shut down. By March 30th, it had turned from, we're gonna blame the Chinese, it must have come from China, let's cough on Chinese people, to it's the Jewish world hoax. It's to Israel created this virus because Israel has a vaccine for this virus and Jews are gonna make money off this virus. And that's how quickly it turns. It's really crazy. Anti-Semitism is adaptive and paradoxical. In other words, Jews are blamed for being power hungry, but also being grubby and not having any power at all. Being greedy, but also, oh, the Rothschilds, they give all their money to, or George Soros gives all his money to politics. So anti-Semitism is paradoxical. This is a map that shows that Michigan is in a very bad club. This is data that's almost 2 years old because it's 2022 data. We collect our data from January 1st through December 31st. So in a few months, we're gonna release 2023 data. The 2023 data is gonna be even worse than this. You can see that in the darkest blue are the states that have the most incidents of anti-Semitism. Michigan was 9th in the country for anti-Semitism. The next statistic I'm going to share with you is even worse. Michigan was 4th in the country for white supremacy propaganda in 2022. This is not a club we need to or want to be in. I'm going to just share with you. You see the rise of anti-Semitism. Now you can see in the early 2000s, anti-Semitism had gone on a decline. We had seen a decline. We had seen a rise in Islamophobia. So people are always looking for someone to blame. So Jews were not being blamed. Muslims were being blamed. But then you start to see it creep up around 2014, 2015. And in 2022 was the largest incident nationally, largest number of incidents we've ever had. Michigan also, always on the rise in Michigan. We could, in the Q&A, if we have time, and I'm happy to stay for as long as you want, I'll answer any questions you have about what I think, why I think Michigan over indexes. These are just some of the things that have happened in the last few months. You see things like graffiti in Ann Arbor, Court Street Bridge, this Court Street Bridge in Saginaw was graffitied with swastikas. Of course, swastikas all over synagogues, Jewish bomb threats. Both the temples here in Grand Rapids have been given bomb threats. And I could talk to you about the bomb threats and what swatting is. I don't have time to talk about everything, but we'll take a minute because bomb threats are a problem. Swatting is the nefarious disinformation about calling in a bomb threat when there's no bomb threat. And it's prankster gone mad. It's a giant problem in this country, not only in Michigan, all over the country. And houses of worship, Jewish houses of worship, and also historically Black colleges and universities are really, really at the core of it. Some of the other things that you see on this slide is a man who was in the white van that was terrorizing parents that were taking their children, 3- and 4-year-olds, into preschool, into a synagogue. The swastikas written on strollers. The picture in the center is a stroller. This is a bad situation. At ADL, we look at incidents of assault, vandalism, and harassment. Most of what's reported to my office is harassment. If it's assault or vandalism, it's usually reported to the police, and it should be. If somebody commits a crime, police need to investigate. So when people send me incidents of anti-Semitism or other forms of hatred, I often tell them if I think it's a crime, I say to them, have you contacted the police? And if they haven't, I say, please contact the police. And we go from there. In 2022, in 2022, my office got, in 2022, my office got 265 calls. About 60% of them were anti-Jewish or anti-Semitism. The other 40% were anti-Muslim, anti-Black, anti-gay, anti-Asian. I would say now, I'm gonna share with you, something right now in a second, and you'll see that overwhelmingly since October 7th, the types of incidents that are reported into my office are incidents of anti-Semitism. It is outrageous what has happened in the last 3 months. The other thing I would say is for people to report an incident, they go to adl.org, they report the incident, and whether it's an incident against Jewish people or an incident against Black people, we review it and we take our work straight to try and ameliorate the situation. It doesn't matter to us whether or not it's an incident of anti-Semitism or an incident of racism or other type of bigotry. Remember, I told you, our mission has always been to fight anti-Semitism and to secure equal justice for all. So if you take one thing away from this talk today, I want you to remember that. Let's unpack Zionism for a second, because that's right now, with the war between Israel and Hamas, that's on the minds of a lot of people. Zionism specifically is just the movement for self-determination and statehood for the Jewish state. And a person can be a Zionist and a person who agrees that Palestinians deserve a state homeland also. I am one of those. It's not diametrically opposed. I am a Zionist. I believe that there should be a Jewish homeland, and I believe there should be a state homeland for Palestinians. So Zionism in and of itself is not evil. It's the idea that you support a Jewish homeland as told in scripture, as talked about hundreds and hundreds of times in both the Torah, which is the Jewish books, religious book, and the Old and New Testament. Anti-Zionism, the opposite, is simply an opposition to a Jewish state. That's what it is. It's not anything other than that. I want to make sure you understand anti-Zionism is not the same as criticizing Israel. Just like I could criticize the United States, it's my right. We have free speech in this country. Criticizing Israeli policies is not anti-Semitism. It's when you take certain things and connect them to the state of Israel or to Jewish people that it crosses over and into anti-Semitism. For example, and we often talk about the 3 Ds, the demonization, the delegitimization, or the double standard when you're talking about Israel. If you hold Israel to a standard that other countries are not, like Israel is killing babies, but you're not talking about Darfur or Myanmar or China or Uyghurs or anything, and you're holding Israel to a double standard, you're getting at a point where you're kind of crossing over. Delegitimization of Israel. From the river to the sea, there should be no Israel. There should be no land for the Jews. That is also, and then demonization, which is, Jews do all this, Israel does all this. You can blame the Jews for that. You can blame Israel for that. And when you collectively connect all those things to hate for Jewish people or hate for Israel, that's when you cross over into the lines of anti-Semitism. I just actually cover that. I wouldn't, three months into this, I wouldn't be worth my salt as a regional director of ADL if I didn't talk specifically about the giant spike that has been happening since October 7th. Spikes across the country, spikes across the world. I'm going to walk over here for a second. Now remember, I told you that in the early 2000s, anti-Semitism was low. Last year, I talked to several people about me coming into to Grand Rapids in a snowstorm about a year ago. And at that time, I said, anti-Semitism is at a fever pitch. make no mistake, we have got to do something about anti-Semitism because the rises that I see in my state are troubling. And I said, we're getting 2 to 3 incidents reported to us per week. After, in the 3 months since October 7th, my office has gotten 20 to 25 incidents reported to our office per week since 10/7. It is open season on Jewish people. It is open season on particularly Israel. And it's not just rallies, and it's not just, you know, Palestinian folks that are at Grand Valley saying from the river to the sea, which, remember, from the river to sea means no Israel. From the River Jordan to the sea, Israel should be free from Jews. So I would say that from the river to the sea is problematic, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about swastikas on people's homes, menorahs being defaced around Hanukkah, people telling other people at a school, if you see a menorah, don't worry, it's okay to grieve. And a menorah is a symbol of a religious holiday. It has nothing to do with Hamas. It has nothing to do with Gaza. It has nothing to do with Israel. The menorah is one of the oldest symbols of Jews because it depicts a fight for religious freedom over the Syrians thousands of years ago. So you see this creeping up. This was last in 2022. Remember I told you this is the data we're using. We are about 500 incidents short of the highest number of incidents ever recorded in 40 years since ADL. ADL's been in existence for 113 years. We've been recording incidents of anti-Semitism for more than 4 decades. This is a 3-month period. This should make you worry because if you have friends or neighbors who are Jewish, or you live next to a synagogue, or you live near somebody who's Jewish, they're being terrorized right now. Students in schools, people at work, things like that. I see a lot of phones. That is a #1 super spreader of anti-Semitism. We're going to talk about that in a second. People ask me all the time, where does anti-Semitism come from and why? And I tell them 3 things. We'll start at the bottom. Ignorance or misinformation. One of the reasons I agreed to come here, and one of the reasons I agree to come to every opportunity, is to help people understand, A, I don't have horns. B, I care about the Jewish people that I am protecting, and also the Black, the Hispanic, the Asian, every LGBTQ person in a school that's being ridiculed or harmed. So ignorance and disinformation, the political divide, and it's a good time for me to say ADL is a 501c3. We do not tell people who to vote for. Anti-Semitism comes from the right. Anti-Semitism comes from the left. I speak out about it just as much. I kind of go straight up the middle, and that's what every ADL person does. I kind of figure when I pick up the phone and somebody says, you're not calling out anti-Semitism on the left enough. And I pick up another phone and somebody says, you're not calling out anti-Semitism on the right enough. I feel like I'm going straight up the middle. And that's what's important to me. By far, the #1, public enemy #1, is that little device that we're all carrying around in our purse or our pocket that has been in existence, widely used for a couple of decades. It is easily the most powerful tool on earth, given to people with no guidelines, no, radio was created. Oh, there's all these guidelines. Television was created. Oh my gosh, there's all these guidelines. All of a sudden, everyone's had a computer where I can talk to my granddaughter wherever I am in the world, right? Really great. I can also use that to spread or disinformation, and that's what it's being used for. So if you remember, the second thing I want you to remember is hold politicians and leaders accountable for setting some guidelines. ADL is fundamentally a civil rights organization. I would never say that people should not have the right to free speech. At ADL, we believe the best antidote for hate speech is anti-hate speech, not shutting somebody up. However, giving that little device that Gary has right in front of him to a 13-year-old who doesn't know what they're gonna do with it, and then having them send a call to call and not want to take their test in 8th grade, so they call in a bomb threat to, their school because they read about it on the internet, is a problem. We need to put guidelines. That's number one way to kind of stave off some of this. It's really crucial to consider sources, no matter what. Don't believe anything, your mom used to say, don't believe everything you see or hear. Don't go to your sister's friend's brother's boyfriend for your information about anti-Semitism. Go to real sources. Just like you don't go to your sister's friend's brother's boyfriend. If you had a heart issue, you wouldn't ask them for heart advice. You go to the American Heart Association. Use legitimate sources. That's one way to guard and check what you read. I'm going to talk a little bit for 1 second about the history of ADL's research on anti-Semitism. We are easily called we testify before Congress. We're often called as the authority on anti-Semitism. As I said, we've been recording it and reporting on it for decades. We've also been researching on it for years, 60 years. We started in 1964 with some research that was done by ADL and the UC Berkeley Opinion Research Center, and also UC Berkeley and the Opinion Research Center at the University of Chicago. And we looked at certain traits that people believed about Jews. A lot of them were the conspiracy theories that I covered so quickly before. And over the last 6 decades, we've periodically done this research. One of the most interesting things I think is about the research is anti-Semitism is found in communities where there are no Jews. In other words, if you look at overseas, and we've done this, we call it the ADL 100. We checked 100 communities and countries all over the country, all over the world, and systematically every few years we check another few countries, some of the hot spots of anti-Semitism, and we do these surveys. And if there's a community in a small town in Italy or in Poland or in England, and there are no Jews there, the anti-Semitic tropes, some of them that I talked to you about, are still existing, even before the internet. This has been going on for years. So it's it's kind of like a real interesting idea. Our research is also held in high esteem because we are sacrosanct with our data. We have partners with this. We don't do this in a vacuum. In 2022 and 23, because of the alarming trends, we did some changes. We went with another group called 1-8 Foundation. We used some of those old questions, but we also did something called the Anti-Israel Sentiment Index. Like, why do people have this problem with Israel? And then we did some comparative prejudices. And again, the troubling statistics are right here. And this is, I showed you those tropes. Remember I talked to you about the tropes. A very large percentage of Americans, 85% of Americans, believe at least one of the anti-Jewish tropes. It's up from 61%. 3%, 8 million Americans, believe all of the anti-Semitic tropes. Americans here in this country with access, so like one of the things I didn't talk about was denial. Denial is the denial of the Holocaust, that the Holocaust even happened. 3% of Americans, 8 million people, believe that the Holocaust never even happened. So it's a it's an enigma, right? So here's a big example. And this is not the number of people that believe all of those tropes, but 52 million Americans, 1 in 5, believe at least one of those anti-Semitic tropes. So you see kind of this conspiracy belief that happened. Okay, these are some of the questions, and I'll come around here. Remember I told you that anti-Semitism is at its core not about religion. It's a conspiracy. Jews use organs to harvest organs. Jews started coronavirus. Jews, fill in the blank. This top one, it says, I'm gonna read it. It says, there are people who secretly work to make sure immigrants will eventually replace all real Americans. This is called the replacement theory. There is a big chunk of people, Americans, that believe that. And at the core of that is Jews pushing forward this idea of replacement theory. Another one I pulled out is, I think that seemingly unconnected events are often the result of secret activities. Remember I told you about the power, about the protocols of the learned elders of Zion, the secret cabal where Jews were going to plan to take over the earth, or the world, I should say, not the earth, the people in the world. The third one says, I think that there are secret organizations that greatly influence political decisions. Again, this idea of Jewish influence over everything. I'm just going to ask you one question. If Jews have all this influence, why don't we get rid of anti-Semitism? Anybody? I mean, we don't have influence. We are 2.2% of the world's population, and yet all this hatred is pushed on to the Jewish community and connected. Now we're going to talk a little bit about other haters. Okay, this is my last, I think my last slide. We're going to talk about connection to white supremacy. There are strong correlations because white supremacists use the protocols of the learned elders of Zion as their playbook, as did Hitler, as did Henry Ford, and other great anti-Semites. I pulled out 3 quotes. One was, this guy he was running for state legislature in Illinois. I'm going to read the quote. We stand for America. We stand for the white race. We stand for the Christian foundation of this country. We are going to smash the queer movement. We are going to destroy the Zionist movement. And that was said by Arthur Jones. And he's a Nazi movement party person. The second one was Patrick Little, a candidate for Senate in California. The Jews have controlled this country for a very long time. We're an occupied government. This is a Zionist occupied government. We must do whatever the hell Israel wants. And the Daily Stormer, a very big neo-Nazi, they're Nazis. All enemies should be combined into one enemy, which is the Jews. This is pretty much objectively true. If we didn't have the Jews, we could figure out how to deal with non-whites. Same deal with women. The women in the audience, or those of you who have wives or daughters, lock them up, because people say same deal with women. Women should be attacked, but there should always be a mention that if it wasn't for the Jews, women would be acting normally. So, this shows you, I told you, Michigan was 4th in the country for white supremacist propaganda. This is some of the hatred that is espoused in our country and not too far from here. I'm going to talk for 1 second about a group called the Goyim Defense League, GDL. You will never hear Carolyn Normandin talk about this on TV when I'm interviewed by the radio or television. I call them a nefarious anti-Semitic group. They go by Goyim Defense League. Those of you who might speak Yiddish in this audience, Goyim means essentially non-Jewish, like a Christian person. So they're kind of doing a little tap dance, like calling themselves the Christian Defense League. They specifically go after ADL because we call them out. Every nefarious thing that could happen, you see this little, that little flat, the one in the top is a page of all the flyers. Something bad happens in the world, a new Goyim Defense League flyer comes out. Their method of operation is taking these anti-Semitic flyers, putting beans or rice in a bag, in a Ziploc baggie, folding up the paper, having the beans or rice be able to weight it down, throwing it out of cars onto the porches or the driveways of non-Jewish people. And when you open that up, all these different flyers are GDL flyers. So what can we do about this kind of thing? Skip that. First of all, you are all doing something really great today. You can ask questions. You can listen to Jewish people, I assume your good intent, you assume mine. We tell people broaden that to Jewish behavior, like something, I broaden to universal behavior. So like the idea that all Jews are great with money, and somebody says, oh yeah, you gotta hire a Jewish accountant because, you know, everyone knows they're gonna Jew you down and they're gonna be really great with money. Broaden that to universal behavior. How many of in this group like a sale? Does anybody want to pay full price for anything? Given that idea, anyone who would want a sale is, you know, a money greedy, hungry Jew, right? So broaden, somebody says something like that, broaden to universal behavior. I'm not saying you should go and ask these questions, or connect it to historical content. No, Jews don't really use blood for kids' to make matzah. I think, you know, this is a historically inaccurate fact. I'm not saying that you should go up to a white supremacist or a neo-Nazi and start going in their face. I'm talking about if one of your friends or one of your neighbors says something that you think is probably borderline anti-Semitic, these are the things you can do it. Indirectly, like start a different conversation, like, oh, let's not go there. And then take them aside and say, here, when you said that to me, I really felt like you were doing something wrong, and I want to tell you what I think. This is, I mentioned ADL.org. You go to ADL.org, take action, report an incident. Any incident is important. And then I told you I was going to give you some resources. I have two things for you today. I have the news release that, and I can make sure you get this so you could email it to everyone. But this is the incidents, this is the news release about the latest data that I talked about at the rise since October 7th. And then I will also send, Gary, I will send links to this. The number one thing I think you should do is go to the Anti-Semitism Uncovered and take 15 minutes and read about the history and the current state of how those anti-Semitic tropes promulgate. I know that's a lot. First of all, thank you for letting me come. This is not the usual topic that people listen to at lunchtime. And I don't have good news to bring most of the time, but I really appreciate your patience and your listening. I went through that about as fast as I could. I know you got to go, but I'll be happy to answer any questions you have afterwards.
Carolyn, you did a great job.
Thank you.
Thank you. You're in the right place, because Lions Club International, part of the reason we're all Lions is because we celebrate all faiths.
Love that.
Okay, so maybe we just need more Lions around the world.
I think
And we
you
can
do.
combat anti-Semitism.
I think you
So we
do.
have a gift for you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Oh,
Remember us?
I
And now
will.
remember, Lions are in 212 countries
Okay.
around the world.
All right.
Okay, 1.4 million men and women.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for the gift. I didn't, this is very nice.
No, thanks for coming all this way through a tough ride from Lansing.
This is an important thing, as you can tell. I care about it a lot. And thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right.
Yeah, be safe. Next meeting is the 6th of February. Some of us will be in Suriname, but we'll send you a video. We're adjourned. Thank you.
That's why.